Well, good morning, everyone, and thanks for being here today. I'm really happy to be here with you, not just because obviously BMO is a very big supporter and recognizes the importance of this event, but also for me, as someone who's originally from Nova Scotia, I don't have the opportunity to get back nearly as often as I would like to. So when the opportunity presented itself to come down for this, I was thrilled to be here. In the time that I have with you this morning, I'm going to talk about making that transition from school into the work environment. And I think that this is a really timely, very relevant topic, given the previous year that we've seen and all the upheaval that we've had in the economic environment. What I want to do is give you some suggestions, some ideas about how to be more flexible, to be able to adapt to some of those changes, to make that transition as smooth as possible. You'll probably see some of these themes reoccur from some of the other presenters as we go throughout the day. But some of the things that I really want to key in on is having you focus on how to lead and take charge of managing your career and really get yourself in the mindset of being your own personal career manager. We'll look at networking, and Jennifer has already mentioned the importance of an event like this being a great networking opportunity. We'll talk about how to understand you as a commodity. And this is something that we're going to spend a fair bit of time on. I'm going to try and get you into the mindset of thinking as yourself as the chief marketing officer of you, as you go out and you start to promote to potential employers your skills, your abilities, your attributes. We'll spend a fair bit of time on that. So let's get into it then. With anything, there has to be a plan. This is a big transition that you're making from school into the work environment. So to do it well, you need to have a plan. And first and foremost is that process of self-assessment. This is your foundation, and this is going to give you the results that provide the direction into the rest of your plan. So if this piece isn't done well, then just like a house, if the foundation isn't strong, the rest of the structure isn't going to be very, very well supported. So as you get into that process, be very honest and be very open about that process of self-reflection. Moving from there, you look at what your career goals are going to be. What is it that you want to do? And once you've established the what it is that you want to do, you start to do some action planning. I know what I want to do, now how do I get there? And you wrap it all up and you put it together into your career plan and start taking those real steps to achieve those goals. Now you'll see on the slide that it's in a circle. So this isn't just a one-time event that you'll do. These are things that you can apply at any point in your career when you go through any transition. So at a year, 3 years, 5 years down the road, as circumstances change, you can go back and start this process all over again. And it will be equally relevant then as it is now. So let's look at each in a little bit more detail. And we'll spend probably the bulk of the time looking at the self-assessment piece because I think that's so critical in this process. So really, what is the process of self-assessment? Well, it's really where you get an opportunity to look at you and really identify the things that are important to you. And fundamental to this, if it's going to work, is you have to be completely and totally honest with yourself. Because as I said before, the results that come from this are going to give you direction at each step along the way as you go through the process. So through your self-assessment, you're going to ask yourself, what are your values? What are the things that are important to me? What are my skills and my interests? And really take an opportunity to get to know who you are and what's important to you. And it's certainly a good opportunity to reach out and talk to other people as well, to help better understand how other people perceive you in terms of skills and interests and what you're passionate about. One of the tools that we like to use within the organization to help people with this process is this chart, where it breaks it down into 4 components. The first part of that self-assessment is looking at what are my personal and professional goals? What are the things that I really like to do? What gets me out of bed in the morning and gets me excited about my job or about my course or whatever it is that it happens that you're doing? Then look at your values and ask yourself, what's important to me? What are the priorities that I have? And particularly important is what life stage that you're at. Because if I was to do this 15 years ago or so, when I was coming out of university, my answers to that then would be dramatically different to what I would say right now. And just as your life circumstances change, your perspective is going to change on that as well. The last two, I think, is where you get very critically important to talk to other people and get their perspectives. Make a list of what you think your strengths are and what your areas for development are, and then compare that with what your peers would say, or with what professors or friends and colleagues would say, and see if the two lists match up. If they don't, and if there's some dramatic differences there, maybe you have to go back and do a little bit more reflection and self-evaluation just to see where the gaps are, and are you really coming out with a realistic picture of what your strengths and what your development needs are. I want to talk a little bit in terms of marketing yourself and identifying what your professional brand is. You know, when I mentioned a moment ago about how you would be that chief marketing officer. Well, when you think of branding and you think about companies that you're familiar with, right away when you hear their name, you have a reaction, whether it's a positive or a negative. So when you hear things like Tim Hortons or Sobeys or McDonald's or any other big company's name, you have that reaction because you associate some feeling with that organization. And that's part of their brand. And companies will spend millions of dollars in advertising trying to position themselves to influence you in order to select them, to spend more of your money on their product or on their service. Well, if you flip it around into the employment world, it's really not that much different. As a job seeker, what you're trying to do is influence the choice of an employer. You're in a pool of applicants for a job. You're trying to influence them that you are the right choice and you are the one that they should select for that job. So you're doing that in a number of different ways. Obviously, your resume and your cover letter is a very powerful marketing tool. But through events like this, where you have an opportunity to network with employers, get to know them, have them get to know you as a potential applicant and potential candidate, that's how you start to develop your brand. Think about people. We've talked about companies now. Let's think about people that have had an impact on your life in some way, shape, or form. First, think about someone who's had a very positive impact, someone who you admire. And then think for a minute about what are the qualities about that individual that you really admire. The things that you come up with are part of their brand. And then on the flip side, think of someone who's maybe had a negative impact on you and the words that you would use to describe that individual. Well, obviously in an employment situation, you don't want to have a negative brand. You don't want to have an employer looking upon you in a negative way. So start to think about how you want to be positioned and how you want to have your brand established. When you leave the room, what are the things that you want people to say about you? And that will all form a very strong piece of your brand and what you're all about. But it's not just about the things that people say about you. Obviously, in an environment where you're interacting with other people, you're networking, you're starting to build those relationships, the way you present yourself is very important as well. Your body language, the words that you use, your tone of voice have a very strong impact and send some very powerful messages. I'll give you an example. When I graduated from university and I went for an interview for the first job that I eventually had after graduation, there were quite a number of other applicants that were being interviewed. And after I was hired, about a month or so into the job, my manager was sitting down with me and we were talking about my performance. And she said, I want to tell you something from your interview that really set you apart from some of the other candidates. When you were there, you were the only one that in answering your questions, now I'm trying to picture it, we're in a big conference room, long table, 5 people at one end, me at the other end. When you answered your questions, you leaned in onto the table with your elbows and really were very, very passionate about what you were saying. And they said to me that the messages that was sent in doing that was that I was very interested in the job, I was very motivated, I was very confident about what I thought I brought that was relevant, that was going to be of value to the employer. So how you package yourself and present yourself to others sends some very powerful messages. I could have came in here this morning and said, yeah, you know, I'm thrilled to be here. There's nothing I'd rather do on a Saturday morning than be here. What does that say about how interested and motivated I am about being here with you today? I think most of you would be heading for the exits by now. So when you look at those same 4 questions about how you establish your professional brand, you start to think and ask, well, how do I present myself to other people? And how do other people perceive me? And then again, where you want to look at and get some feedback from the people around you in your network is how well do I build relationships? And where are the areas that I can improve on? So again, you've got your list of the things you think you do well. Does that match up with what the people around you are saying you do well and things you want to focus in on improving on? So as you come out of that process, you've identified now what your brand is. You want to move into what are my career goals? Kind of ask yourself the question, what do I want to be when I grow up? And there's a number of factors that you have to put into this. And a couple of the key ones, and I think, again, especially timely, are, number one, the employment market. Do your career goals align with the jobs that are available? Or are the jobs that are available here? Will I have to move in order to get what I want to do? Do I want to stay in Atlantic Canada? Do I want to stay in my hometown? Am I flexible and open to moving to other parts of the country or maybe even internationally? Because we're increasingly are in a global market. Then you also want to look at what training and development opportunities might be necessary to reach my ultimate goal. And one of the things that I've seen over the years, and I've worked in around recruitment for quite a long time, and I've done a lot of events like this and different career fairs, are people that are coming up to me at the booth and saying, I want to be this position up here, a very senior position. And at an entry-level situation where you're just coming out into the workforce, that's a great position to aspire to and eventually take some steps and go through your career path to get there. But it's not going to be the job that you're going to get coming into the organization. So you have to be realistic about what the role is going to be that you may take on with a company and understand that it's going to take some time to get there. It's not going to happen overnight, and there's going to have to be a lot of perseverance on your part in order to get there. Really important that you do some research and look at it from a few different ways. One is, before you go to interview with a company, and it doesn't matter who it is, do some research about that company. The people that I've interviewed over the years that have impressed me the most, and pretty much a standard question that you'll always be asked is, why do you want to work for this organization? The ones that have always impressed me the most are the ones who've come in and said, well, I've looked at your website, here's your objectives, here's your goals. I understand this is the big projects you're taking on in the next year or so. Here's some of the challenges that I think you're facing. If you've done that and you articulate that to someone who's interviewing you, that again goes back to showing the interest in the organization, and you're not just coming to the interview because you've got nothing else to do that afternoon. You also want to look at the industry that the organization is in. You know, for example, within the area that I'm in, within banking, not only can you go onto the BMO website and look at our annual report and get all kinds of great information about us as a company, but we're part of the Canadian Bankers Association. So if you go to that website, you find out a lot of industry-specific information. And most employers are part of some organization like that as an umbrella organization that's there to support them. So you can find out a lot of really good industry information if you do that. Then you want to do a bit of research in terms of the role that you're going for. I've been in human resources for, I guess, about 15 years now. And when someone comes to me and says, I want to get into human resources, well, that's great, but it's a very broad field. So are you looking at coming in and focusing your career in recruitment or compensation or employee relations? Or are you just looking at HR in general and you're willing to take any roles or as many roles as you possibly can within that line of work? And then finally, what a lot of people I think tend to overlook is the culture of the workplace. This is where you spend the majority of your time. Minimum of 8 hours a day you're spending in the workplace. So I think the culture is something that has a real strong importance when you're looking at career decisions. And there's a lot of different lists that are out there now, Canada's top 100 employers, the top diversity employers in Canada. And when you look at those, there's always a breakdown of why those companies are listed there and what it is that they're doing within their workplace that makes them a top employer. So if the only thing that you're interested in is a paycheck, then maybe the culture isn't going to be so important. But I think because of the amount of time that you spend in the workplace, I think the workplace culture has to be a real driving factor in your decision of who do you want to go work for. When you're looking at answering that what do I want to be when I grow up question, I think this is very helpful in looking at finding out, are my career goals really what I want to do? Is this really the job that I want to do? And there's a few different ways that you can do that. You may have the opportunity to go and job shadow with somebody who's experienced in that particular role and spend some time with them to find out a bit more in depth about it. You may have the opportunities to do mentoring. And this is something at BMO that we're doing a lot more of. We're doing mentoring sessions with a number of our different lines of business where people come in and get to meet some of the executives in there. And they'll share their experience and their knowledge with the people being mentored. I think it's a great way to find out more about a company and about a role. You may have the opportunity to do some volunteer work. And certainly one thing that's very, very important to us at BMO is the opportunity for internships. And there's some information that I have at the back table if you want to find out a bit more about that. But I think a lot more organizations now, and I had the chance to speak with a few folks earlier this morning about this, are recognizing that they're getting into some real staffing challenges because of their workforce aging, hitting that retirement age, and now they have to identify new ways of getting talent into the organization, and rather than just saying, here's your desk, let's go to work, is actually spending more of a focus on training through an internship program where you can learn the role and then be ready, once you've graduated, to step into the role and be productive. So once you've identified what your goals are, then you want to start to form your plan of how you're going to put this all into action. And talked a little bit about these things already. You're going to form those specific actions and assign some timelines to them where you're actually going to go out and say, okay, I know what I need to do. Here's where I'm going to go. These are the people that I'm going to talk to, and this is when it's going to happen. And at the end of the day, here's what the result is going to be. This is how it's going to get me closer to what I want to do. And in using the chart that's on the screen there now, it gives you the chance to lay out what specific steps you need to take, what you anticipate the outcome will be, and what supports that you may require in order to make it happen. And then you come back and you put it all together. You finalize your career plan. You now know what your brand is. You know who you are, what you're all about, and are in a position to better go out and present that to an employer so that they have a really clear picture about you, the skills, what makes you unique, and how you're going to be the right person for that role with that organization. You've gone through the opportunity to reflect on you. You now know what your strengths are. You know where you may have to focus in on developing a little bit. And now you also understand what your career goals are. So going forward, you may know that 5 years from now, I want to be in this role, but I can probably make 2 or 3 transitions along the way to get to that role. And I'm probably running a little bit short on time, but I want to throw another story in. A couple of weeks ago, I was in Waterloo, University of Waterloo, doing a similar event to this. And we had a BMO employee there who had graduated from Waterloo about a year ago, came into the bank as a customer service rep in one of our branches. Right away, he was identified as being a high potential employee. So very quickly, he moved from customer service rep into another role, and just within the last month or so, is now a commercial account manager. So the role that he went into, probably when he graduated from university, wasn't the one that he was really targeting as being the entry point that he wanted. But he understood and he recognized the fact that it was a step to get to where he wanted to be. And because he displayed his potential and he took the opportunities for development that were given to him, He moved in very quickly, and now, like I say, in just over a year, he's now into his third position. That won't happen for everybody, but certainly the opportunity is there if you display the right behavior and characteristics that the employer is looking for. And again, this just kind of gives you a little bit of a summary of how you can chart it out and have it nicely organized for you as part of your plan. What's your job in all this? Well, obviously, you're the one that's going to drive your career and the direction that it's going to go in. So you have to be in a position where you're going to lead that direction. Really know yourself and be honest with yourself. If you're someone who is very tied to your family, you think, okay, I want to be home for supper every night, there's some jobs that just are not going to be right for you. And again, it goes back to the culture of the workplace. There are some places that may expect you to be there longer hours. Focus on what makes you unique. Everybody does something well. And sometimes people have a tendency to sell themselves a little bit short. Think about your accomplishments and the things that you've done already. And when you get to that point in the interview process where an employer is asking you, tell me about you. What is it that you've done that makes you stand out from the rest of the pack? Really key in on the things that you've done that make you special and the things that in terms of an accomplishment, that you're really proud of. Have a good understanding of the current employment environment. And again, it's been a really challenging year, but when I look at where we are within BMO and our organization, I'm really encouraged and very optimistic about where we are coming out of what I think is the worst of the last year from the economic environment. And I think there's reason, as I look at the number of postings across the board from any number of employers in different sectors, the number's starting to come up again. So I think there's a good reason to be optimistic about the employment environment. But bear in mind that there's a lot of competition out there. So again, going back to that marketing role, you really have to do a good job of promoting yourself so that you're standing out from the 200, 300 other applicants that are applying for a job. And it's not uncommon to see that many of applications come in. Be very open about having conversations with the people around you and be open to the feedback that they give you. It may not always be what you want to hear, but it may be very valuable and gives you that piece of information that you need to go back and reflect and make some adjustments so that you can be successful and be that right candidate for that particular employer. As I mentioned before, know the business. To take the time to do the research and really come in and speak from a very knowledgeable position to an employer, or even at a networking event like this, to talk to them about and display to them that you know what they're all about. And finally, have that plan. If you go at it very haphazard, the end result may not be what you want it to be, or it may take you a lot longer to get there. But if you have a plan and you're very focused, it's really going to help you along the way in making that transition from the school environment that you've known into the world of work. And that's what's really important, is that transition is managed well and it goes as smoothly and as positively as possible. Thank you.